Hi everyone, my name's Nicole Hurd and welcome to Biz Bestie TV. I am your Biz Bestie and today we're talking about self-care in business and as a mum, as a woman and in life. So it's a very exciting topic. We are just waiting for everyone to pop on. I'm going to bring Leah on now so she can introduce herself and let us know what she's about. Hi, welcome Leah.
Hello.
How are you? It's so exciting for you to be here. This is the third time I've spent time with you this week, which is so cool. We had an amazing night at Leah's We Being event last night, which I'm sure she'll share with you about now. Would you like to introduce yourself just while I go and check on the other panelists?
Absolutely. So my name's Leah Kearns. I am a metaphysical mentor for business. And that basically means that I help people to design and activate their businesses from really a place that feels good for them. And all of the work that I do is centered around well-being. So it's about going beyond just wellness and health and understanding our life in these different life areas and trying to keep things separate, to then consolidating and having a more holistic view at the way things work and how things can integrate together into your life and to create more harmony for you and your family and friends, the people that, you know, are the reason why you're in business, because you're trying to help them and help more people in the world too.
Beautiful. Leah, you have a little bit of a different take on what others may take as self-care. What is your main thing that you believe that we all should do for ourselves?
Yeah, for me, I feel like the one key thing that I feel is important for self-care is to be in awareness. And it's really about being able to have observation without judgment, without real harsh criticism or massive consideration for what you need in any one moment, and instead just be able to be in the flow of what's coming up for you. So that self-care, it's really listening to that quiet, subtle voice.
I'm just waiting on Sunita and Romana. They're having slight troubles jumping on. So we're going to continue. Last night I came to Hestia House, which is part of We Being. Would you like to tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So in the journey of creating my business, what I've kind of come to realize is that there's two aspects in this, and both of those are centered around community. So it's about the fact that we as humans love to connect with each other, and primarily we're driven to seek out that connection. So what I found is through online business, that's most certainly happening through social platforms and through things like groups that have common interests, or all centered around various topics. But I feel like the other key element then is the physical. And so that's kind of what we're trying to create at We Being, trying to create both the spaces, both the physical space and the online communities. So our kind of concept is centered around conscious, connected community. It's about having those conversations that you possibly might not otherwise have, because your friends might not talk about the kind of same stuff as you're interested in. And it's also then establishing that physical community together as a safe space for people to come and play in and have fun in and learn in and just connect with each other. So that's kind of what we're trying to create here at Hestia House in Geelong.
Coming from your opening event, it was amazing, and you certainly did create that. Sorry about that, everyone. I'm just trying to get Romana to connected. Sorry about that. Last night we had your first event and you had the showing of Arenda, which was amazing. We also heard from the amazing Tammy Pike, who is all about self-care. So I listened intently with what she shared with us last night. And one of the big things I got from her with self-care is about setting your intentions about self-care.
Yeah, so really looking at Tammy's philosophy, it's as much about the act of what you're doing for yourself as the actual intention that you're creating for yourself around it. So self-care can be anything. It's like meditation. It can be anything like washing the dishes, actually, and taking that moment to have a cup of tea and boil the kettle and steep the tea in the tea bag. And that can be an act of self-care even. And I think that, you know, between Tammy's whole philosophy around self-care as being these small little rituals that women are doing already for themselves, like putting on their makeup and applying skincare products, all those tiny acts can actually be that self-care and can be that self-love. And it can take you 2 minutes, or you can decide to stretch it out for the entire day if you feel like that's what you need to support yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry, Leah. I am paying attention to what you were doing. I'm doing two things. Tammy has these amazing kits, which you and I are huge fans of. You've got yours today. I've got mine. I haven't opened mine yet. I saw what was in it last night. The vibration of that kit is amazing because of the organic part of it and the fact that you're setting the intentions. And we do, I'm just letting you know that Sunita's here, so I'll just bring Sunita on now as well. Hi, Sunita.
Hi, Leah. Hi, Nicole.
How are you? We're just speaking to Leah. She had an event last night in her home at Hestia House, and we were talking about the event. She co-hosted with Tammy Pike, who creates these amazing self-love kits. Mm-hmm. So it's very exciting, and they're created with intention. So you actually get an intention with each product as you use it. So that's where we're talking. But I will pause, Leah. We'll get straight back to that. Sunita, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks for having me on, Nicole.
Oh, my pleasure.
Excited to be here with Leah and you and Romana. I don't know if she's on yet, but yeah.
No, she's not.
Exciting conversation. So, did you just want me to introduce myself? Is that what you
said? And why you're here to talk about self-care.
Sure. So, my business is called Mindful Mama, and it's about so I guide mums to create a holistic lifestyle where they feel aligned, not just physically and emotionally, but also spiritually. So I think that alignment's really important, the whole connection with all those aspects. So that's where the holistic, I think the holistic model comes in, what Leah was mentioning before as well. And I think with the self-care in biz, it's really important because I work with a lot of mums where they feel like their jobs are just not aligning with them career-wise. And especially then becoming a mum is a big shift, and then they start to kind of really reassess, well, what do I want out of... I feel like they just start looking for something more purposeful and as well as something that suits the lifestyle as well. So, and that's how I got into it with my own personal experience as well. And when it comes to business, so one of the things I think is really important with self-care is not comparing where you're at to other business owners, especially because I think that's a trap that, women in general, I think can really fall into that trap and be really hard on themselves. So I think that's a really big one that I come across a lot with the women that I work with.
Yeah. It's very important. I think today too that Anu brought up, why is it as women we don't support each other as much? So I think that will come across as our topic. I know it's certainly important to myself, and knowing you both fairly well in work environment, I know that it's fairly important to you as well. What is it Leah and I spoke about intention of self-care, Sunita. What's your and it's very important to us that I believe in setting intentions even when I have a conversation, how successful I want that conversation to go. How important do you think it is about setting intentions around self-care?
So, setting intentions, I think it's really important because I think if you don't set the intention, it's one of those things that just doesn't happen a lot of times because other things start taking over, and I think you just have to really set an intention that it's a priority for you and create. I think Leah mentioned rituals before, and I think creating those self-care rituals is really, really important, and setting that intention that you're looking after yourself, but not only are you looking after yourself, you're looking after everyone around you when you look after yourself as well. So I think it's really important, not just to yourself, but to the people around you. And that's your family, your clients, everyone, really.
So,
around you.
knowing you both so well, Leah, what is the mistake we all make around self-care? What do you think being businesswomen is, and what is the mistake we make around self-care?
Yeah, I feel a common one, and, I get caught in this trap myself. It's adding it as something to the to-do list, and it just becomes another box for us to tick instead of being in the joyful experience of what it actually is, and almost intuitively choosing the thing that's calling to you that could be self-care for that day. So if it's the cup of tea, or if it's the walk down the road, or if it's just visiting a cafe and buying yourself a nice little treat. Like, I think adding it as another box to tick, I feel like that's the trap for all of us as women in business, because that never-ending to-do list is something that keeps us chained to the desk for far too many hours. And we kind of feel like self-care can become one of those things that just goes on the list to tick, instead of it actually being the deep restorative and relaxing experience that it can be.
Sunita, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I agree with Leah, but I think it's also things like I do a lot of mindfulness with my mums that I work with, just teaching them mindfulness tools. And I think a really important one is just stopping and just being really self-aware of the language that you're even talking to yourself, because I think there's a really strong inner critic that a lot of women have. And again, coming back to just being quite hard on themselves, and just it's always about kind of getting things done and achieving. And when they don't hit those goals, I think that voice can get really loud in your head saying, oh, I haven't done this, I haven't done that. So I talk a lot about self-acknowledgement, like start acknowledging what you are doing and not just what you're not doing. So I think that's a really big one that comes up with especially the mums that I work with. And, that's also around the kids as well as the business. So I think that's a really important factor, just to stop and acknowledge that they are achieving things and that what are they doing well as well.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I'd just like to take a second to welcome Romana. We had a few technical issues, but Romana has been able to join us. Romana, do you want to just share with everybody who you are and what your expertise is and why self-care is passion for you?
Okay, so I'm a holistic health coach, and I actually specialise in fatigue management and I guess just your from a spiritual perspective and intuition, just from your own energy input as well. And it's close to my heart because I've worked for myself, having 3 children over the years, and about I'm trying to think how many years ago it was now. It was number 3 child. So he's just turned 5. So just before I had him, I was trying to work from home, and I was pregnant and wondering how I was going to keep the ship running. And basically, I just had a tanty one day and went, well, if I can't do it, nobody can. And I didn't really look into, back then, of course, internet's a different place now, into outsourcing. So I just sold up my business. And then as soon as he was born, went, oh my God, I've lost my entity, I've lost my identity and who I am. And I raced back in to get back into it. And of course, I wanted to lose the baby weight and all the rest of it. So I lost 30 kilos, started my business again. And then about 12 months into it, I got diagnosed with fibromyalgia. So basically, I know the way not to do things, and just my experience as well in learning along the way with business especially, and that's why I like to work with entrepreneurs. It's, what works and what doesn't, and what do we need to have in place to keep that balance. So that's something that's really close to my heart because I've been on both sides of the fence.
Yeah, thank you for that. Just on a short note, there's 3 women I'm very passionate about and love the things that they share in my personal life and on my journey. So that's why I've invited them on. So we just spoke about the number one thing that we don't take for granted, that we take self-care for granted. What is it that you want people to learn from this conversation, Romana?
Basically, you know what, I'm a bit of a realist as well. Look, I talk about the spiritual side of things, and I'm very pragmatic. It's all about boundaries and sometimes just picking your battles. Like, that's self-care. Self-care is the small stuff. Self-care for me, losing weight, running a business, having, 3 kids, it's stressful, and sometimes it just means getting up and eating properly, and sometimes it means cancelling a client, rescheduling, or making your business work for you. I think that's something when we have our own business, we feel like we have to do everything, and sometimes, again, self-care is the small stuff. It's making decisions for you based around what's best for your body and what's going to help you run, and not start resenting the things around you, your business, your children, your family, and just be stressed out all the time. So, definitely the small stuff that makes a big difference.
Leah, what have you got to add there?
Yeah, I think following on from that with Romana, I think, and being really honest with yourself about how much available time you really do have, understanding that there are all these other elements in business besides being of service to clients. So if you've got client face-to-face time, how much time does it actually take you to really generate these clients, to have the clients actually book sessions with you, and whether that's sales, marketing, follow-up conversations with people, like really being honest with yourself about the available time you do have. And then it's, sticking by those boundaries. So if you're saying you're only doing 3 client days a week, then it's the 3 client days a week. And if those 3 are only the totality of what you have for your whole business, then you kind of really need to have awareness and have some understanding around how long tasks really do take. And if you do need that extra support, stick your hand up and ask for it. And there's so many people who are actually willing to help you with that little bit of an extra component. And I mean, there's a lot of low-cost outsourcing options too for when you get to that point where you can afford to bring on just that a little bit extra help for you. Because if it's something that's taking you 6 hours to do, and you can pay somebody $35 an hour and they can do it in an hour, you've just gained back 6 hours worth of client time that then you can actually bill. So it's understanding and being honest, I think, around the available time that you really do have, and then not working beyond what you say that you're going to. So not sitting there till 2 a.m. getting that thing finished week after week after week, because those 1 weeks turn into 10 weeks, turn into exhaustion and burnout, which is the reason why most people have left corporate jobs or whatever to start their own businesses,
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't continue in their businesses for that reason as well.
Mm.
So Sunita, I know that you have tried to run a retreat, and one of the things that you really found out was that as women, we're not prepared to invest in ourselves in self-care.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah. So again, I think a big one for women is guilt comes up a lot when they do something for themselves. And, those small acts of self-care, I think we're getting better at doing, but it's probably the bigger acts, which is something like a retreat, taking 3 days just to purely nourish yourself. And it's not got anything to do with your business directly, but you're just kind of nourishing yourself so you can come back more full. But I feel like because it's not a direct investment in your business, a lot of women, that was a real challenge for me. It was like I really had to convince them that it's okay to take 3 days just to nourish yourself without having an agenda for your business, or without it being, like a retreat where you're going to be learning business tips. It's, because I just do purely healing and self-nurture. So, but really that is going to benefit your business in the long term, because my experience has been when I've done things like that, I've come back so much more inspired, and my creative side really kind of flares up in that kind of space, and then I come back with like these brilliant ideas. So I find like it's a really tricky one, because I find when they see it as quite self-indulgent, something like, taking 4 days to go to Byron Bay just to do a purely, relaxation and nourishing retreat. It's a bit of a jump maybe.
Yeah. Romana, what do you think prevents us from investing in ourselves? Even Sunita's explained that we do it to improve ourselves in business, but I do think that we do need to have that caveat to do it even to improve ourselves for business. I think as women we would never go to something like that, or we haven't been conditioned to go to something like that, or without a reason for actual pure self-care.
Yeah, I think too, and I think a lot of us, when we have our entrepreneur hat on, the first thing we think is, what's our return on investment? If I spend this money, what am I going to get out of it? So that's why I guess when it's got a little bit of a business element to it, everyone just goes, yeah, I'm going to get something out of this. I'm going to be able to put some money in and double it, you know. And unfortunately, we don't see ourselves as a mini bank, I guess, mini bank account where we have to put deposits in and deposits out. You need to invest in yourself as well. And yeah, unfortunately, and I guess, you know, when you've got business owners that are mothers and or maybe having a bit of a side hustle and another job where they're having to take time away from something else and justify it and organise it, I guess it then starts to slip into that overwhelm of, and then that's where that fear-based mentality comes in. Am I good enough? Can I do this? Can I justify spending $2,000 on myself? And I guess that's where that block comes up of that that fear-based emotion in our brain where we go, oh no, we don't know what the outcome's going to be here. And two, I guess when it's got to do with healing, in my experience, some women almost not even realising they're doing it, sort of know that it's going to make a change subconsciously, and then already block themselves out and go, oh no, that might get scary. It might get too in-depth. If I focus completely on myself, can you imagine the shit that's going to come out? And oh my God, I might not be able to focus when I get back, and I might not be able to run my business. And so that's all happening in the background while they're reading your sales copy. And by the time they get to the bottom, they've already wrote themselves off and decided that this isn't going to be good for at least the next 12 years because I've just got too much on. So that's a bit of a waffle on, but that's the process that I see all the time. And unfortunately, I guess the terminology of the bank, you know, in and out, you know, if you I can vouch for that. If you burn out, there's no business, baby. You'll walk away without even realising you're doing it. Yeah.
I'm just thinking of the amazing Laura Griggs, Sunita, where maybe we do need a profit first system that we actually do put, you know, even compassion back into ourselves first before we do offer service. Leah, I know that you would definitely like to speak about the conscious and unconscious level of self-care. What would you like to add?
Yeah, so I really feel like this is where I in particular have noticed this massive trend and rise in certification. And so people believe that by me doing a course, because it's got this bit of paper at the end of it, I am then justified in spending that money on myself. And so, we become like course junkies. We become justified in our making our decisions and to invest that money in ourselves. Yeah, and so we go around and round on that treadmill, you know, thinking that when actually we just want that expression. We want to sit in community. We want to learn from like-minded people. We want to have those conversations. And so if we can sort of start to get comfortable with what it is that we're really wanting out of it. And again, it's that honesty, being honest with ourselves and saying, actually, I just want to be with other women who are exploring this work too. And I don't need to feel like I'm certified to do anything with it at the end of it. If I want to take elements of it, I can. It's not some big strict system that, you know, I need to honour every single last component or I need to sign a contract about something. I think that would actually lend us to becoming a long way further closely to be able to honour that deep subconscious need of being in those spaces, yet not having to justify it for ourselves. And so watching that come into consciousness, I think, again, for me, it always just comes back to awareness, noticing what is there without judgment and being able to hold the space as a witness for yourself to see what comes up through that process of just asking little questions, asking, you know, why is it that I really would like to do this? And if this is something that I'd really like to do I actually feel like I really need the certification? Or am I just trying to justify it to myself as a business expense with a fixed outcome that I can then add as another services to my services list? You know, like I think that's the direction I'd say about that one.
I am a you know that I'm a certification junkie because it's actually I don't do it for that. I actually do it for my self-importance, I guess, my own ego. That I like to know that I'm not going to say the wrong thing to the wrong person or whatever. But also saying that I have 18 years experience in what I've done as well. So I would definitely agree with you that to go back to all the challenges we're offered these days, all the freebies that we must do, all the webinars, there's so many models that we are told that we have to do out there to participate in, that we're spending our time on doing what we have to instead of the what we want to. And I think if we could step back and take time to do the want tos, and that would actually involve self-care. Has anyone else got thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think too with the noise of social media, and you've heard me use this term before, the noise of you should and you wouldn't, let's sign up to this and courses, and I think everybody is in like overstimulant mode as well. Like, then that's going to turn that self-care nozzle right down. Like, you're just going to be like, no, it's not even on my radar, because our brain is waiting for the next sting or waiting for the next thing to come up, waiting for the next email. We're just in responsive mode all the time. So I think, stepping away and again, going back to boundaries, sometimes you got to learn to take a little step back from that business, from the online space sometimes, because you don't have time to look at your own needs and your own wants. Again, like you were saying before, what do you want? You're so busy looking what everyone else is doing, what everyone else is, other people on retreats, I wish I could do that. But it becomes unattainable because we're watching these people have these perfect lives on social media. You then look at yourself and go, oh no, but I don't have all the dots connected yet, so I can't go and do that. So again, reflecting back on your experience with building a retreat, I see that all the time where, people are just so overwhelmed with information. There's just no time to look at what's important, what they're doing. They're worried about what everyone else is doing. So that's my little input on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Romana, Sunita, the guilt.
Yeah, guilt's massive. It just keeps coming up. And I agree with what Romana said about there's just so much available to you and you feel like you need to be doing it all. So that whole Facebook overwhelm and exhaustion and like, don't get me wrong, I love the online space and I love the connections made. But to me, the face-to-face is where I have found personally a lot of the deepest shifts have happened in face-to-face group work. So I'm still a big, I'll still make sure I'll do the face-to-face as well as the online connection, because I think that's a big one that's getting less and less for some reason. And I think because there is so much available online. And I know some people for distance-wise or whatever, that definitely is a great way to connect to people. But I think it's kind of overtaking that face-to-face, the value of the face-to-face connection as well. So yeah, I think that's a really big one for me.
I guess to the same thing is from what you've just said about the value of face-to-face, it's how much emphasis or value we put on these things ourselves. How do we get others to understand, or how do we empower women to put a value on self-care or even face-to-face? Because we've all mentioned the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. We actually need to empower each other to have these beliefs. Leah, what's the first thing you think we can do to say, okay, hey, Nicole, this is what I believe we should do?
Yeah, I think for me, my biggest belief is that I am the greatest example for people when I live my life in a congruent way with what I believe. So that means that I'm not actually saying I'm trying to teach you something and here, have my glasses and here's what I think. Instead, I am being the beacon of what is possible. And so I think living in our own truth and walking our talk and having people, sharing that from a place of individual aspect and saying, if for an example, mine today was after the event that I ran last night, I woke up this morning quite tired. And so after I did the things that I committed to this morning, I just went back to bed all day and laid in bed and did the things that I'd like to do as self-care, like writing a little bit and watching a couple of Netflix shows and reading some books and, delving a little bit more into stuff that I'd had on the back burner because this other thing for business came up, and I had been working a few nights because those events required night commitment. So therefore, not just, going along with that, but going, hey, hang on a minute, right here, right now, this is me walking my truth. And so when I give an update to my community about how that event went, sharing that too, sharing that and saying it's okay to stop and rest. It's okay for me to relax. And I didn't need anybody outside of me to give me that permission to do that, because it's my business and it's my business. Do you know what I mean? So I think for me, it's really about,
needing, but you didn't spend any money on that investment in yourself. It was just your pure knowledge that you needed time to rest.
Yeah. And I mean, that's come at greatest personal expense before, right? At the cost of my health, the cost of time with my loved ones. Like, that stuff has been sacrifices I've made previously to get to the point where I now live and understand that this is important for something that I really need for myself in my business. It's an aspect of that holistic living that we all each support, and we each talk about, that I believe is just imperative. Yeah.
I strongly believe that everybody that we talk to does want a holistic living environment, or they want to embrace it. I just don't know how much we do embrace it. Sunita, what do you think?
I think it's definitely improving. I think a lot more people are aware of the holistic model, but I still think there's a long way to go. And I think, I think what it means for everyone is different as well. So I think it's designing the life that works for you, and it's not a one-size-fits-all model either. So I think that's the beauty of the holistic model, is that what makes you feel whole and what makes you feel connected. It's not going to be the same for everyone. So, and I think there's a lot of self-inquiry that goes into that. So I think doing the work to really get to know who you are, at that deeper level, not just on that, okay, I want this career and I want this and I want that, but who are you at that deeper level, and what is going to make you feel more whole and connected to yourself. And that's when I think your connections around you will deepen as well. And I think a lot of fulfillment comes just from living in that way. So I think to really kind of go a bit deeper into what it does mean to live that holistic lifestyle, it's not just having great health and having a great business, but are you kind of fulfilling yourself spiritually as well? And I think that's a big aspect of it. Yeah.
So my question to everybody when they mention spirituality is, what is spirituality to you? Because I don't believe that we all have the same spiritual journey or believe in the same things. What do you say is a spiritual journey?
Me?
Yeah.
Are you? Yeah.
I
I see it as I believe there's something bigger than me, but that's my personal belief. Like, I believe there is something bigger, and I feel there is that universal energy that connects us all. So, and that's my personal belief, but I don't think everyone needs to believe that. But I feel at one point in everyone's life, they do kind of reach this point where, what else is there? Do you know? Like, I think that question arises, that bigger, deeper question arises, like, what is the bigger purpose of life in general? And I think it's when that question arises is when you really start questioning your spiritual journey. So, yeah.
Awesome.
And I think that's different for everyone, for sure.
Yeah, beautiful. So, Romana, hearing what Sunita's just said about her, that we're always looking for something bigger, what's your take on that?
I would have to agree. I was nodding my head as she was talking. I find with people that I've come into contact with, because my basis of my business years ago started out as a spiritual-based business, and I kind of moved into that mentor role. So I've been doing this thing a long time, hands-on as well, and teaching all the spiritual stuff. People go searching for something when they're not well. people go searching for something when they're tired. And I think it all, spirituality, again, I believe it's the same thing. It's something that's bigger than everybody. It doesn't matter what you believe in, God, whatever you want to call spirituality. But it all comes back down to your inner self and your inner thoughts and how you process information and what matters to you and what helps you get through the day. I think that's being spiritual. It's kind of the honouring yourself. I think that's what it all comes down to. Because if you're not prepared to take the time to be silent and still and hear what you need from yourself, how can you do what's best for you? That sounds like a riddle, but anyway, hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, I just think it's a personal thing. It definitely is. And, and people go looking for it when something's wrong. And then that's when they start asking questions, because I find people are too busy being busy, and then they want it all. Then they want to go on a spiritual journey and they want all the things to happen all at once. And unless they're ready to make that commitment to themselves, it's not going to happen, is it? So, yeah.
I would agree. Leah, your take on that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you're creating a system where prevention, you're trying to lead people to that realisation before they get the need. Am I right?
Yeah, so I've seen a massive trend, as Romana said, of people coming to this place of realisation, this awakening point, or this questioning, as Sunita said, about what is the purpose of this, or what is the bigger why, by those life events. And it's usually their own health crisis or a loved one around them, their nearest and dearest is passing away, or something major happens to them and their health, for them to start questioning. And I'm trying to cultivate conversations before people get to that point. It's that seed planting of when people start to, and the logical mind works interestingly in this way, when people start to identify with patterns, and our society is a very psychological and mental heavy society. So a lot of us automatically are doing things in life, our belief structures, what we do in our day, our routines, they're all patterns. And so a lot of our life is derived out of these patterns without us having that understanding and awareness to it. So what I'm trying to introduce is the opportunities, well, like this, really, like what you're doing, Nicole, through Biz Besties, is have those conversations. And, although it might be uncomfortable sometimes to talk about what your truth is, I think it's important for us to show up in that way for the people around us, and for us to start sharing from those places, even if it's just the tiniest little amount in perhaps a language, or using language that kind of is very colloquial, very relaxed, something quite generalized, and even talking in analogies, having it be fairly simple for people so that they can start to make connections with the patterning, because they might hear you talk about it once, and then they hear Johnny on the radio, who's their favourite radio presenter, talking about it. And all of a sudden it sparks this little bit of a joining in things. And before you know it, they're starting to make connections with the fact that their body's telling them something because they're not sleeping properly. And then they hear that maybe there's this naturopathic thing that they might be able to try, because they've heard somebody's friend, someone or other. And this is how it kind of works. And in the beginning, we call this coincidence. But it's what gets us to that place then, to have us start paying attention before the major health crisis or before the person passing away, to have us really question. So I think, starting that dialogue earlier with both community, but also with self, and encouraging people to ask those self-inquiry questions. To me, the spirituality is the journey of the return to self. So self-care for me goes hand in hand with what that is, and even just questioning is self-care for me. So that's how I view it.
So last night we watched Orenda, which was amazing, and we watched the amazing Ricky James speak, and she brought something to my attention that I have really thought about in the last 24 hours, and that was that it's okay to sit with our discomfort without judging it or hiding or being fearful of it. How much do you think that and you also said, Leah, about the awakenings of, different things happen to awaken us. I think I don't think that we think it's okay to be discomfort. I don't think we actually sit there and go, it's okay for that awakening to happen. We are so fearful of it and scared of it that we actually don't always use it as a point of self-care, that it is a place of awakening or a place of change. Does anyone have any comments on that?
Yeah, I think
Definitely.
it's just,
I totally agree.
sorry. I was going to say, I think it's sorry,
I'm going to go Romana.
I think it's going back to that conditioning. Our brain automatically goes, this is scary, stop. It sends out the stress receptors, and then we see it in normal language as anxiety, as fear, as sadness, and we don't go there. We shut it off because our brain doesn't know how to react, because, when I felt like this in a different situation, it was scary and it was uncomfortable and I don't want to go back there, thank you very much. So we automatically, I think, conditionally go, no, this isn't good for me, I'm going to stop right now. So we don't allow ourselves to be in that space. And as you said, it can be uncomfortable but really powerful at the same time, because once we sort of go over that mountain, you've gotten through that, you can then reflect on it and then, of course, spiritually awaken to, what did it mean? I need to question it. I need to go deeper. How can I avoid that situation again, or how can I heal from that? There's so many elements to it that are going to bring us up to that next level, that we don't give ourselves the opportunity to do so. So, sorry, I had to jump in there. That's my opinion on it.
Okay. Yeah. Sunita, I think you had something to add there as well.
Yeah, pretty much what Romana just said, but I think the growth happens when you sit in that discomfort. So when we kind of don't allow ourselves to sit in that discomfort, you're actually denying yourself that little bit of transition each time that discomfort does appear. And I think it will just keep coming back until you have sat in it and allowed it to kind of pass through you and change you to a certain extent, because that's why it's come up. It's come up to kind of say, you need to acknowledge something that's going on, or, look at something in your life that might not be working for you. And, I've seen it a lot in my previous career as a pharmacist. There's just so much available to numb the pain that a lot of people don't even have to go there anymore. And it's almost that whole conditioning again of living that autopilot life, like just continue. And then you've got all these drugs available to you where you don't actually have to feel the pain or, go through, if an incident happens that is really challenging you, you don't even have to go there if you don't want to, because there is this, cocktail of drugs available to numb your pain.
And unfortunately, if you go to the pharmacist, you can self-medicate these days as well. So it's a huge issue. Leah, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that it certainly is an aspect that for people it can become very overwhelming when they're in that state of being. Like when that happens to people, like even for me, I trip over myself when I get to that point. And what happens is my body starts to lock up. My body literally starts to lock itself down to get me to pay attention to the fact that there's something going on, right? Because I've been ignoring the little things because they're so subtle and they're so gentle. And I think emotion is the first thing that comes in. And we kind of go, no, I don't have time to feel that right now. I've got to get this thing done. I've got to be that place. I've got to wear this hat, this role. I'm the wife, I'm the mother, I'm the sister, I'm the friend. Everybody needs something from me right now. I don't have time for that. And I think that's where we kind of just put it in the box and put a lid on it and go, yeah, sometimes we have enough awareness to go, I'll come back to that later. And then we just don't, right? The box gets put on the shelf and then something else happens in a few days' time where it triggers again and it trips us up and we're like, whoa, no, hang on, I don't have time for this, right? So it just kind of stacks on top of each other to the point where the body's like, nah, sorry. And that's basically where I ended up this morning, right? Because I've been like, I've just got to get through this event. There's been major stuff happening. There's been stuff in the background, but I'm kind of like, I can be in it briefly, but not enough time to actually process and move it through to the extent that it's actually asking of me to do, right? I hadn't been able to reach into my tool bag and pick out the tool that I needed to apply to it. Like, my biggest tool for everything is forgiveness, big time. And I just think sometimes, A, we don't know what tools we have available to us. B, we don't know somebody else who can hold space for us without judgment, without feeling like they need to fix it for us. You know, and I just kind of think that these simple little things, and again, it comes back to that, well, maybe if we did think retreats were more valuable in terms of what they could provide us with, these small little tools that we could then apply in our lives when we do feel like crap in the morning when we wake up, maybe that's the possibility of being able to start shifting around the fact that we can sit in these things and we can be comfortable in them and know that they're going to move through, instead of just having them come up and going, I can't feel this right now, and shutting it out. Yeah.
Do you think we can compartmentalize the different parts of us to be able to deal with things better or to create a better self-care routine? Or is that something that we shouldn't do? So should I compartmentalise the stress of a mum, as the stress of being an online business person, the stress of being a partner? Like, there's so many things there's so many balls we have up in the air these days that we're trying to be good at and do it well, that sometimes it would be easy to go, okay, I need to work on this. Or is that what's actually creating the problem with self-care, that we go, okay, we'll just work on our business right now, instead of going, no, let's work on it as a whole, which would be better self-care? What are your thoughts?
Well, for me, I think that when a problem or a challenge shows up in one area of our life, it's in all areas. It's just that it's more obvious in the one that's slapping us in the face that day, right? So if it's coming through your business as an issue, it's actually in your relationships. It's actually in your finances. It's actually in all of the areas if we wanted to segregate and separate life out. And so I kind of feel like if it's that obvious to me, then I need to make time to consider it from the perspective I'm currently in. I need to make time to consider if there are other perspectives that I might be able to shift into now. You know, I need to understand if there's more to it, that because I'm feeling that viscerally in my body, right? I'm physically feeling when that shoulder's locking up or when that tension headache's coming in. And I kind of feel like we can temporarily compartmentalize, but you still got to deal with it. You still got to, at some point, say, this keeps coming up. This headache will not go away. You know, it's a temporary solution, I think, if we segregate and separate. That would be my view.
Romana, what's your view?
Yeah, I think from a day-to-day basic, like, let's bring it down again to the nuts and bolts of it. I think when we do separate all elements of our lives, we touched on this when we started talking. How many hours in the day do we actually even have? If we decide at 8 a.m., okay, I'm going to work on my business for 3 hours today, then I'm going to do the mum stuff from 12 till 2, then I'm going to do this, then I'm going to cook dinner, then I didn't get time 3 hours this morning to do business. I'll jump back online tonight at 9 p.m. to 10. We're not scheduling in any time for ourselves, and I think the overcommitment is a major problem where we're not trying to fit our own lives into our own schedule, if that makes sense. Like, I just think that we're not looking at our lives on a whole and going, okay, I've got 3 different roles, how can I merge them all together to make it work for me? And a lot of us, the reality is that, and I think my generation, I'm 32, a lot of us that do have children that have our own businesses, we're still home with them. You know, they're still quite small. So, you know, there's always that balance of not enough time, and then we explode. And, you know, and we'll blame it on the one thing. Well, I didn't get enough time in my business today. Well, that's not the issue half the time. You know what I mean? And we'll base it on that, you know, and we'll put so much pressure on ourselves. And then a lot of the time, because we don't want to look into ourselves from that self-care point of view, we're not going to go, oh, my God, I'm a crappy mother, I can't cook, dinner was burnt. oh, it was the business. I got to run away from the business, or I didn't have enough time. It was because of that. It was because of that. Because I'm a failure. Because I can't do this. Because, you know, that is my identity. That's where I get to be myself. That is me. That is my baby, type of thing. Yeah, I just think it causes that ripple effect in the day because there's too much going on. I think there's just, yeah, I think we need to slow down a little bit and kind of, yeah, fit ourselves into our own schedule a little bit, because I find, yeah, when I speak to clients, even friends of mine that I just have chats with, how are you going? I don't have enough hours in the day. And I'm like, mate, whatever you've scheduled, you've just planned 27 hours worth of work. Like, how many hours do you have in your day? Because that's not how many I have in my day. So I just
Romana, who's just decided to go back to university as well, mind you.
Yeah,
so
I know. Don't talk to me this week. We won't talk about this week. But yeah, just that overcommitment, you know. Well, I'm already well, that's exactly right. You know what? Let's call me out. I'm already planning next year and how much time I'm going to have next year because my youngest is going back to school. So I'm like, oh, I'll go back to university. What the heck? But anyway, so this is what I mean. Like, we're always planning to use up time that hasn't even happened yet or that doesn't even exist. And I think that's a major problem where then we try and pinpoint, oh, where did it all go wrong? Well, it's probably because too much is going on.
Yeah. Sunita, what's your thoughts on this?
Yeah, look, I think it is a whole holistic approach where it is great to incorporate it in everything, but then I think sometimes you do have to compartmentalize, and I think the best way I deal with that is actually taking a step away from everything and just looking at it and saying, well, what really needs my attention the most at the moment? And where am I being pulled? Like, you know, so where am I being pulled? And a lot of time it always comes back to boundaries and me overcommitting and saying yes to things that I don't necessarily have to. And I think that's the biggest trap that I personally fall into. So it's just then, again, it's stopping and reassessing the boundaries again and, well, what needs my attention the most at the moment? And I think also being a mum, one of the things I've learned is that every day is different. Like, there are going to be days where your child, my son's 9 now, so it's a bit easier because he's at school, but you know, there is days where if he's got a cold and he has to stay home from school, I need to just adjust my business around that. And I have to be okay with the fact that I'm not going to get that amount of work done today, but this doesn't happen every day. So being okay with putting things aside for whatever it is, a day or a couple of hours. And again, and it's really hard not to feel guilty because it's always on the back of your mind, well, I've got to get all of this done. But it's all about then coming back to then quietening that voice that's always telling you you've got to do this and do that, and just saying, well, just that whole self-compassion, like, you know, it's okay if, and like what Leah said before about just doing nothing, like, you know, having that day because that's what your body's asking you, you know, just to do nothing. Yeah, so I think it's a bit of both. I think it comes into the whole, you know, everything, but then also sometimes you have to take that step back and look at it from that, you know, the different areas of your life.
Beautiful. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
One thing we haven't touched upon, and I wonder if it is an issue to self-care, is are people frightened off by the expense they think is attached to self-care? What do you think, Leah?
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought this up because I think a lot of people, when they think of self-care, they think of acts of doing instead of just coming to this place of understanding that as women in business, you know, we're constantly supporting people, and then we come home and we put on all the different hats that we wear at home, you know, the mother, the sister, the friend, the person who is always there no matter what. And I think self-care can even be seen as something as communicating our own needs. Like that to me, as we've talked about boundaries, right? It's been mentioned a few times. It's communicating what we actually need from those around us in order for us to feel supported and like we can actually have that time and space if that's the things that we need to be making. Or perhaps it's even self-care is somebody else taking care of dinner for us so that we can go and have a bath, and maybe that's the little freebie that we're giving ourselves, which is just creating that time and space. So I think that there's many different options to understanding and creating what self-care is for you. But I mean, for me, and people take it in different slants too. Some people are like, I need to feel like a child and feel joyful and be having fun. Some people are like, I need to feel like I'm feeling refreshed. Mine is I need to feel like I'm feeling relaxed. And that's what self-care is for me. And I think to understand what that means in practicality terms, so I know what to give myself so that I can create that feeling of relaxation, and have it be a range of things, from things I might pay for as treats right through to, when I say treats, I mean things that I deserve and things that I am worthy of. And if that's on a regular basis, that's on a regular basis. It goes into the budget, and that's what happens, all the way through to the little things like going down to the garden and picking some flowers, because that's actually something that I really enjoy doing and makes me feel relaxed. So, yeah, I think understanding and having that range for me is really important.
Thank you for that. Sunita, how important do you think spending money on self-care is, or do you have to spend money on self-care?
Again, well, I think it depends on what your lifestyle is, what your budget is, and, doing the things. It can be the small things that don't have to cost a lot of money, like, going down to the beach or going and getting time out in nature. And, to me, going to the gym 3 times a week is my self-care, and doing meditation and yoga, all those things, which don't cost a lot of money and they're quite accessible. But I think also you have to question if you aren't putting aside money, and you can put aside money towards those bigger indulgent kind of, I think indulgence not the right word, but those bigger acts of self-care where, something like, again, a retreat. Because I think when you come back from something like that, you're so connected to yourself at that deeper level, which you probably can't get from those daily acts. So I think it is really important to set aside that budget, or, say that you deserve that and that you're worth that amount of money, and that, that it's also, again, working with mums, that whole guilt of leaving their kids with their partner. But I'm like, well, your partner's just as much a parent as you are as well. So also allowing all of those kind of self-talk and beliefs to not take over the fact that, are they really stopping you from having that, doing those acts of self-care for yourself. So I think it is important to put that aside for yourself.
Thank you, my love. Romana, what do you think? As Sunita has said, it's very important to value ourselves, whether it be a small investment or a big investment. What are your thoughts on it?
Look, everybody's language is different to what's important to them, and I think that's something as facilitators that we also need to speak about, because I think, again, that sort of not realising we're saying it in our language, but people pick it up and go, oh, well, I can't afford that, I'm not doing the right thing for myself, and it sends them through that spiral of, well, they said that I need to get a massage every 4 weeks, or else I'm not doing this right, so everybody's language is different, and that's coming from someone who is a massage therapist, will say, yeah, come to me, I'll help you out. But and some people don't like to be touched. Anyway, that's a different story. So yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean sitting and meditating. We've had this conversation. Some people just, they don't like it. They don't like being in that space. So it doesn't mean that traditional meditating, yoga, massage, whatever makes sense to you and whatever makes you feel good. You reflected on something really good before. I think it was you, Leah, that said it. Some people need joy. Some people need to feel like that, that inner child is being, their needs are being met. I think a lot of it just comes down to people wanting to be heard. And whether that means you can actually hear your voice, or your partner can hear your voice and say, okay, I need to delegate. And I've learnt this recently, and people don't know what you need unless you voice that. So, and I think we forget that a lot of the time. People come to me and say, oh, I don't get any time for myself, I don't do that. I'm like, yeah, but, and again, boundaries. Do you always say yes? Yes, I do. Do you let people know that you need help? No, I don't. Do they actually know that you're not coping? No, not really. And once they start to make these changes, then it validates them for themselves and like, oh, I've actually got more support than what I thought. And then again, going from small to big, that makes the big changes. Then they can justify spending the money on the bigger stuff that matters to them and budgeting it in. And I think that just creates that waterfall effect of, okay, I'm worth it. Because, of course, yeah, like I was saying before, when it comes to financial, there's a range of things why someone will say no. And I don't think necessarily it's because they don't think that they're worth it. They're worried about what's going on the outside.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, thank you. It's nearly time to wrap up. So I really want to hear from all of you what you want our viewers and YouTube followers to learn from this conversation. Leah?
My biggest one is just awareness and creating some form of internal questioning around what self-care is for you. Like even just to spend 5 minutes in thinking, well, what is it that I want to be feeling when I'm giving myself self-care? And then from there, what might that look like? You know, starting that self-dialogue and self-communication. Even if you don't have answers, it's fine, you know, but being willing, I think, to ask the question. And if you don't feel safe enough to ask it with yourself, find somebody that you can have that sounding board conversation with.
Yeah, I think that's great. My cup has been full this week from connecting with amazing women. So I certainly recommend having that conversation with people. And I think what you're saying, Leah, is just find that emotion you want to feel that makes you feel full again. That your cup feels full and that you can go out and pay some work. Would I be correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Sunita, what would you like everybody to know?
I think for me, it's probably, I would say just stop and listen to your inner voice, like really quieten your mind and really listen to what is it that your inner voice is really asking of you. And, you know, and that could change moment to moment. But, and, you know, again, it's kind of going by what Leah said, it's that awareness of what does your body need from you, or, you know, what is it that it's asking of you. And a lot of times it has the answers. So it's just really listening, tapping into that. And you know, seek the connections and the support as well. If you feel like you need more kind of help with those tools, I think just really, start seeking where can you, like what communities or tribes that you resonate with. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you for that.
Thank
and
you.
Romana, what is the one thing that you would like all our viewers to learn from tonight's conversation?
I think if there's anything they can take away, whether they have a business or not, or whether this is a conversation they just wanted to hear around self-care, I think the main thing for me is, and we're trying to break it down in simple terms, just start the small stuff, you know, start with the small stuff, create the boundaries, write down and use it as a journal prompt. What does my ideal day look like? And I think once you start to actually dive in and understand what you actually want, not what you think you want, what other people think you need, or whatever you think they want you to do. When you start asking yourself those questions, and again, boundaries, no, I can't do that, I'm not always available, stop overcommitting, then I think you're going to start to see change. So I think, start with the small stuff, and that's going to obviously grow into the bigger stuff that, you know, you're going to start enjoying life a little bit more, I think, when you implement the self-care, the massages, the yoga, the gym, and all the stuff that actually means something to you.
Yeah, thank you for that. From the conversation tonight that I've got, ladies, is certainly that we've got to create boundaries more for ourselves and other people, that we do create time for ourselves. And the next thing would be to ask ourselves what we actually need. So thank you very much. These three amazing ladies, well, we're all Victorians, so we all run face-to-face businesses as well. Leah runs an amazing business called We Being from Hestia House in Geelong. Sunita runs Mindful Mamas in Melbourne. And Romana is a wellness coach, so she's online. So everybody's online as well as face-to-face. But Romana, you also have a practice as well that you help people with massage and everything. So at the end of the conversation, I'm sure the ladies are going to pop in and put their business details on, so if they'd like to be contacted, if you would get that be okay?
Sure
Awesome.
thing.
Now, tomorrow's Worth Wednesday, where we ask everybody lots of questions. So I am sure if you have a question around self-care, the ladies will please tag them, and they would love to be of assistance for you, or let you know whether their business can be assistance of you. Please don't ask for freebies of service if it is a paid service, because you know that that's my pet hate. But the ladies will obviously set their own boundaries and offer you as much help as they can. And if it's not a free service, I'll certainly help you out with that as well. Ladies, it's been awesome. Thank you very much. As I did say a few times during it, you are some of my favourite ladies in the online and face-to-face space. So thank you for joining me on episode 3 of Biz Bestie TV. So we have Leah from Reading. Sorry, who was that?
I said thanks for having me.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you for coming. Part of this is Romana's doing, by the way. Anyway, so next week we have the amazing Trudy Pawlowski and Jen Turow, which is a very controversial topic maybe for some. For me, not so much. It's about direct marketing or multi-level marketing, that we should actually be taking these ladies seriously and considering it a serious business. So I do hope if you've got anything to say or would like to add to that conversation, or even like to be a part of that conversation, please let me know. But for episode 3, I'd like to thank Leah, Sunita and Romana, and I hope you enjoyed our episodes. The details will be on the bottom of this, and also if you're watching it on YouTube, they will pop in and put their details via the YouTube channel as well. So thank you for joining us tonight, and we'll see you next week.
Thank
you. Bye.
Thanks, Nicole. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.